All right. This is a video on solving a quadratic function by creating a perfect square, by completing the square. So the first step when you're doing this, okay, you can solve any quadratic function using this system, okay? So what you have to do is make sure there's no number in front of the x, and after that we have to change this number to make sure that this is a perfect square. So the way that we do that is we divide this by 2, that'll make 3, and 3 squared will give us 9, which means the last number has to be a positive 9. It has to be. So now that we know that, okay, something happened. I added 4 to this 5 to get to the 9, which means I have to add 4. So because whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, this becomes 16 because I added 4 to this side. Now that I know I have a perfect square here, I can do the shortcut for a perfect square, which is square root the front. Repeat this sign. Square root the back. And now I have my perfect square. Equals 16. Now if I have to solve for x. So I'm going to square root both sides. So if I square root this side, I'm left with x plus 3. It just cancels the squared. And if I square root this side, I have a positive or a negative 4. Because I honestly don't know if it was 4 times 4 that made the 16, or if it was negative 4 times negative 4 that made the 16. So now I have two possible solutions. I have x plus 3 equals 4. And I also have x plus 3 equals negative 4. So this is going to make x equals 1. And this is going to make x equals negative 7. Because I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and this will be my end result. All right? So I'm going to do that again, but this one doesn't meet that first requirement. Okay? This one has a number here. So before we can start, I have to divide everything by negative 2. So if I divide this by negative 2, this by negative 2, this by negative 2, and this by negative 2, I am now going to have x squared minus 18x plus 5 equals negative 12. All right, so then this, we have to divide by 2. So now we have the exactly the same system we had before. So how do I find out what number this has to be? I divide this by 2, I get 9. 9 squared makes 81, which means this number has to be 81. Everything else stays the same. So now I have 81 over here. So how did I get from 5 to 81? I had to add 76. Okay? So if I add 76 here, I'm going to get 64. So now we have our perfect square completed. So this means it has the shortcut, square root the front, repeat here, then square root the back, which is 81, so it's going to be 9. Let's see if there's 81 right there. I don't know if you see that. Equals 64. Square root the front. I'm left with x minus 9. Square root the back. This will make positive or negative 8. Now remember, if you're taking this quiz and this isn't the perfect square, then it's going to be just, if that was square root of 63, I would have just left it as square root of 63. If you have a calculator, you would probably round to the 10th or round to the 100th, and then solve the equation just like you'd be. Okay? So now we have x minus 9 equals 8, and we also have x minus 9 equals negative 8. So if we add 8 to this side, I'm going to get if we add 9 to this side, I'm going to get x equals 17. If I add 9 to this side, x equals 1. All right? Okay, perfect. Now we're going to go to this, solving using quadratic formula. Now, you need to have this memorized. To my knowledge, it is not on the reference sheet. The formula that we're going to be using is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay? So it's just like the axis of symmetry with the square root and the determinant. Okay? If they ever ask you for the determinant, they're talking about just what's in here. That's it. All right. So here, before we can do the quadratic formula, it has to equal 0. So we're going to subtract 35 from both sides, and now we're left with this formula. X minus 2x minus 35 equals 0. So now that you have that, you have to name A, B, and C. A is the number in front of x squared, which is just 1. B is the number in front of x, which is negative 2. And C is the number all by itself, negative 35. So negative b is 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4ac. So minus 4ac is negative 4 times 1 times 35. That's what it is. Or negative 35 in this. So I put it over here first, and I'll write the number right there. If it's positive, I'll write plus. If it's negative, I'll write minus. So negative 4 times 1, that's negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 35 is 140, a positive 140. Divided by 2a, which is just 2. So now this adds up. So now we have 2 plus or minus the square root of 144 divided by 2. The square root of 144 is 12. So now it's 2 plus or minus 12 divided by 2. So one of the formulas is going to be 2 plus 12 divided by 2. And the other formula is going to be 2 minus 12 divided by 2. Okay? So this is going to be 2 plus 12, that's 14. 14 divided by 2 is going to be 7. Here it's going to be 2 minus 12, which is going to be negative 10. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And those are our two solutions for the problem. And how do we know it has two solutions? The discriminant is a positive number. If it was a negative number, there'd be no real solution. And if it was a 0, there would only be one solution. Why does 0 mean one solution? Because that would mean that I'm adding by 0 and subtracting by 0, and which would create the same result. All right, let's try this again. Formula again. You can rewind and write it on your paper if you want. We just have to look for A, B, and C. So A is 3, B is negative 5, and C is negative 12. So the formula is negative b, which is 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 25, and then minus 4ac. Remember that. Minus 4 times 3 times 12, negative 12. 4ac. So negative 4ac is going to be negative 12. That's going to be 144. So plus 144. That number keeps on coming up. Divided by 2a, which is 2a is going to be 6. So 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 will be the bottom. So let's figure out this. So now we're left with 5 plus or minus. This is going to make 169. The square root of 169 is 13. So that's where I got 13 divided by 6 equals. Now, first one's going to be 5 plus 13 divided by 6. And this one's going to be 5 minus 13 divided by 6. So one of the answers is going to be 18 divided by 6, which is 3. And this answer is going to be negative 8 divided by 6, which is negative 8 over 6, which simplifies to negative 4 over 3. And those are our two answers. All right, now our last one here. we're figuring out if the points they gave us are linear, quadratic, or exponential. So linear, that would mean, so the top is increasing consistently. This is x and this is y. So this should also increase consistently because it would mean that it has a slope, or decrease consistently. So the difference between these numbers has to be the same number over and over again for it to be linear. So if they're all the same, it's going to be linear. So this goes down. It went down by 24. Then it went down by 8. Then it went down by 2 1/3. So take away 2 and then take away a third. Yep. No, take away 2/3. So 2 2/3. So 2 2/3. And then, so it's not going to be linear. If these were all the same, it was going to be linear. This is not linear. Let me just double check this. Minus 2 will be 2, and then minus 2/3 will leave 1 1/3. Yeah. So we're good here. And then this is 4 over 9. So these are not the same already. So I know it's not linear. So I'm not going to keep on going. Then I'm going to check if these are the same. Now, if these are the same, then it's going to be quadratic. Okay? Got a little lazy here, but I have enough 3 numbers. If these are the same, we'll go keep checking the other one. Now this is, I'm adding 16. And here, it's not adding 16 again. Okay? So it is not 16. So that means it's not quadratic. It has to repeat all the way through for it to be linear. It has to repeat all the way through to be quadratic. So then if it's not linear and quadratic and it's asking me if it's linear, quadratic, or exponential, that automatically means that this one is exponential. Okay? And that's it.